Take two. Woo! Get it.
That was a good one.
That's why Nick doesn't like it when they do that. You're good.
Okay. Okay. All right. We are here again today to make another cake. The cake of this month is watermelon. So I'm really excited to show you guys how to do that. We're going to get started right into it by cutting our cakes. We have already mixed our batter, poured our cake in. I used the baking pan spray and coated all the baking pans with that and put a parchment at the bottom. And so then that way when we bake it, it comes out super nicely. These just came out of the oven about 5 minutes ago. So they're still really warm. We want to make sure they just rest for 5 minutes. Then we're going to pull them out of the pans. We see this parchment on it. Just take it off. We're going to put that aside. These are marble cakes. In case you're very indecisive like me, you can have chocolate or vanilla. You know, or both, whatever. So now what we're going to do is we're going to be cutting the tops off. We want to make it's even. Alexa, stop.
Rude.
Rude. I am in the middle of something. There's more cake in the oven, in case you're wondering. That's what she's telling me. So what we're going to do is we're going to be cutting the tops off of these cakes. And then we're going to be cutting them in half. So we cut the top off. You can eat that. You can save it for your best friend. You can throw it away. You do whatever you'd like to do with that. My best friend will probably be eating these.
Yep.
Because that's her payment. So now what you're going to do is you're going to be cutting these in half. Now there are tools out there that you can use to cut these evenly, or you can just do it like me and freestyle it. So I just kind of just make sure it's straight, go saw back and forth, make sure I'm even. Now what we're going to do is be putting parchment in between these layers before we freeze them. So you just lift this up and put it on the parchment. Put that back on. You can see the wonderful marbling. Can you see the steam on my black shirt? Like my soul. That's what I'm always, always wearing black because it just depicts how I feel on the inside. It's fine. So now we're gonna get a press and seal. This is a huge, huge, huge thing. So once you bake your cakes and you take them out of the oven, and you're going to have them cool and pull them out, and they're still hot, like they still are steamy. You want to make sure that you're putting them in press and seal and then putting them in the freezer while they're still hot. What that's going to be doing is trapping in all that moisture and keeping that cake nice and moist. If you don't do that, then your cake is going to dry out faster and you're going to have to use all sorts of things to try to get it to be more moist. So you do that first layer, then you're going to get second layer of press and seal. You're going to wrap that bad boy up into a double press and seal package. Super yummy. So now we're going to go and put that in the freezer, and then I magically have a chocolate one out there ready to go that we're going to build. So now we have our frozen cake and we have our icing. You're going to need 5 cups of icing if you're doing a 6-inch cake. And then you're going to do 1.5 cups of filling if you're doing a 6-inch cake. If you're doing any bigger, you're going to want to do, for an 8-inch cake, you're going to be doing 8 cups of frosting. And you're going to be doing 3 cups of filling. There's a dog trying to make her cameo. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our frozen cake and we want to unwrap this. Now it has ice crystals on it. You want to keep those ice crystals. That's because we froze it when it was still warm and we locked in that moisture and we're able to, that'll be absorbed back into the cake. Okay, so we got that. So now we're going to take our bag and you're going to hold your bag between your thumb and your finger like this. Chocolate cake on my finger. Just like that. And you want to have this rest on your arm. You can side boob it if that's easier, but you're gonna want to be squeezing it like this. You don't want to bear claw it. This will pop holes in your bag. You wanna strangle it. You're gonna do a dollop of buttercream in the middle, and that's gonna be our glue to glue it to the cake board. You're gonna take your cake, and you can see this was the top that I cut off, and then I cut the cake in half. You always want the middle of the cake up. So you're gonna make sure that is centered. Now the reason why we do that is because you will have the same surface area for your filling all the way up the cake. If you keep switching it, it won't have the same amount of surface area, so you'll be like this and then like this with your dam. And then also the middle is just easier to work with. If you're trying to work with the bottom of the cake, it pulls off a lot easier, so it crumbs more, so it's just easier to use that one. So if you are right-handed, like I am, left-handed people like my husband, just kidding, I still love you. So you're going to be holding it, but you're going to be on the front left corner of your cake, and it's always going to be the front left corner no matter what. If you're left-handed, you're going to be on the front right corner. I don't know if I can do it left. Look, I'm left-handed! So you're going to be like this if you're left-handed. So if you're right-handed, you're going to be on the front left corner, and you want to have this tipped up, back away from you, but you want to have this up and away from your cake. So then that way we can create a tall dam for our filling. Okay, and then we're going to take our filling bag. These are 16-inch bags. These ones are 24-inch. So you can buy these bags. I have the link on my Amazon storefront that you can get these. You're going to just fill. We do a tight spiral. I start in the middle and then I stay in one spot and I turn my turntable clockwise. If you're left-handed, it would be counterclockwise. And we're just gonna go to the dam. And you're gonna get your black spatula. You're gonna hold it between your thumb and your middle finger with that pointer finger on the rest. And you're only gonna use this tip of your spatula. You don't want it to be flat like this. You want it to be tipped up. And you're just going to make sure that you have that covered. Okay. And then you're going to get your next layer of cake. And we have that parchment in between so that way these cake layers aren't sticking. You can see this is the bottom of the cake. This is the middle. And so we put that down. If you find that you cut your cake a little uneven, just make sure you fit the tall side with the short side with the high side, so then that way it will balance back out. So you're going to make sure that's even on the last layer and kind of push it down a little bit. Then we're going to do our dam and our filling 2 more times. Okay, so now we have those 2 layers done, or 3 layers done. What we're going to do is we're going to take the last layer of cake, and you want to make sure this is the bottom, this is the middle. You can see the middle. We're going to be putting that on. You always want the middle of the cake up. You don't want the bottom of the cake facing up, like this way. So what you're going to do is you're going to make sure that's all centered. You're going to push that down a little bit so that way it is all glued together. And then we're going to do the crumb coat. Crumb coat this bad boy. So the crumb coat is just going to be a thin layer that we put of frosting on it. So then that way that when we go do our main frosting layer, all the crumbs are inside the cake and then we'll get into our main frosting. So you're just going to clean off your black spatula. I typically have a little bowl handy. And you're just gonna do a loose spiral on the top. It doesn't have to be a ton of frosting, just a loose spiral. You're gonna, again, have this tipped up just like this. And you're going to use quite a bit of pressure. So the biggest mistake that I have my students in my class do is that they are super, super soft with this. If your cake is frozen, you can be pretty rough with this and it be okay. You wanna make sure you can see your cake through the icing. If you can't see your cake through the icing, and it needs to be really thin. And also your biggest thing is you're going to be pushing either from the back or off the front. You want to kind of push your buttercream over the edge, but you don't want your spatula itself fully to go over the edge, because that'll pull that buttercream off, and you don't want to do that. But you see how I have all these buttercream edges? You want to make sure that your cake looks like this. You don't want it to be super thick in the middle and just up to the edge. You have to make sure that looks like this. It's the biggest problem that people have. when moving on from this step. Okay, so now what we're going to do is do the side. Okay, you're going to be right where the cake meets the cake board. You're going to be on the right side if you're right-handed, left side if you're left-handed. And you're going to pipe a layer of buttercream into where the cake meets the cake board. This is going to fill in any gaps that we have. And then you're going to add buttercream to where your dams are. This is going to do two things. The first thing it's going to do is fill in any gaps that we have from where the dam is to the outside of the cake. And then it's also, we're going to be using that excess that we have to do the crumb coat for the side. So when you're pulling down buttercream, you just want to make sure you grab some like this, and when you're pulling it down, so then that way you have like a little mini piping bag in your hand every single time. If you're having issues with your buttercream going back up into the bag, you can twist it like this, and so when you twist it, that buttercream won't go back up into the bag. So now we're going to take our black spatula. Again, you're holding it between your thumb and your middle finger with that pointer finger on the rest. And you're gonna reach up and over to the opposite side of your dominant hand. So I'm going up and over to the left side of my cake. And you're going to be pulling and rocking backwards. Pull, rock back, pull, rock back. And you're just going to be going around the cake just like this. You wanna make sure that your elbow is not sinking. You don't want to kill this edge. That is a big, hard no. You want to make sure you're straight up and down and you're pulling and rocking backwards. That rocking back motion, like this, pull, rock back, is going to get that buttercream off of your spatula. If you're finding that your buttercream is not in a certain spot, all you have to do is pull and not rock backwards, and that will get that buttercream off of that specific spot, and then you can move it around your cake. When it comes to the bottom, you can do kind of like a pull up like this, so that way it can get your buttercream up if you need to, but you're gonna just essentially do the same back and forth motion around your cake. And once your cake is covered, you're going to stop. It doesn't have to be pretty or smooth or anything like that. You just have to stop when it's covered completely. Now that it's covered completely, we're gonna get our opaque scraper. These are also in my Amazon shop. So these are awesome, and I highly recommend if you're doing any cake to get these. They will be the biggest difference in getting a smooth cake versus a not smooth cake. So it has, you're gonna wanna use the thick one. Thick, the thick girls, it's the best. So the thin one is really good when you're doing shaped cakes, like a ball or anything like that, or you're trying to get an edge. But you want to make sure you're using the thick one when we're doing the crumb coat or doing the icing of our regular cake. So what you're going to do is you have 3 rounded edges and a pointy edge. That pointy edge is going to be where the cake meets the cake board. So you're going to, if you're right-handed, you're going to have it on the bottom left corner. If you're left-handed, it's going to be on the bottom right corner. Okay, and so you want to make sure you choke up on this scraper. You want your fingers to be close to the edge right here. Now the reason why is if you're pulling them back like this is bendable. So you're not going to be getting a nice, crisp, clean look on your cake. It's going to just be reapplying that buttercream that you're pulling off. Okay, so we're going to be on whatever dominant hand you are, and you want to be no closer to the cake than a 45-degree angle, and you're going to turn the turntable consistently. You want to make sure that if you're right-handed, it's going counterclockwise. You're going to be turning that consistently. I start at the bottom. Okay, so if you are having this problem where you have these lines in your cake, what's happening, you can see all these lines that I have, what's happening is you're not doing consistent of enough motion around. So if you're turning your turntable consistently, once you stop, no matter how much pressure you're using, you're going to be pushing back into the cake. So that's why you're getting those lines. So you have to make sure you're doing a consistent motion. Now we're not pulling a lot of buttercream off of the cake, we're just pulling off a little bit of the excess. So you can still see my cake is covered. Okay, so we did the bottom. Now we're gonna go to the top. Now this is so critical. What you wanna do is you wanna make sure you're no more than a 1/2 inch above the cake. Now, that's why I love these icing scrapers, is because it shows you the line, so you know where the 1/2 inch is. You don't want to be more than a 1/2 inch, and then you don't want to have it like this. You always want the other 3.5 inches of your scraper to be on the side of your cake. I don't care if the top part of your scraper isn't touching the top of your cake. You want to make sure you're no more than a 1/2 inch above. You make sure that you are no more than a 1/2 inch above the cake. That's why I love and that you are touching the side of the cake always. It shows you the reason being is if you try. You don't want to be more than a 1/2 inch, and then you don't. You're going to automatically want to do this. You always want the other 3.5 inches of your side of your cake to be on the side of your cake. I don't care if the top part of your scraper isn't touching the top of your cake. So you don't want to cone the top of your cake more than a 1/2 inch above the cake. So that is why you always have to make sure that the side of the part of your scraper. The reason being is if you try, to move this. So now we're going to do the top. You're going to automatically want to do this. Find your shortest wall. Leave the side of your cake. If you're right-handed, it is going to be at 8 o'clock. Now think of the top of your cake as a clock face. So 12 o'clock is away from you. 6 o'clock is towards you, and that always have to make sure that that forever. Like it doesn't matter if it turns. This is always going to be 6 o'clock. So when I'm pulling my walls down, because see, we have these beautiful walls. That's why we push the buttercream over the edge, is to make these walls. You want to make sure you're at 8 o'clock. If you are right-handed, you'll be pulling it from 8 or 9. You can pull it from right here. If you're left-handed, you're going to be pulling it from 3 or 4. So you want to make sure you're not pulling it from the back. You want to make sure you're pulling it from 8 or 9 o'clock. Now, make sure that you have a clean scraper. And you want to just pull that wall down, just like this. We're not going all the way across the cake. We're just pulling that wall down. And then you scrape it in your bowl. Okay? I'm at 8 or 9 o'clock. Pull the wall down. Oh, see, I'm doing it in my house. See, you get all the people who are coming to play with my children.
Eat cake.
Eat, they want the cake, yeah. All right, so we're just pulling down these walls. It doesn't have to be perfect. This is just the base layer of frosting. So we're gonna stick this in the freezer, and then we'll move on after it's cold. All right, so now we're going to do the main frosting of this. We just pulled it out of the freezer. Now it's cold, it's chilly. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our buttercream, and we're going to do a tight spiral at the top. You wanna make sure you're touching the last layer of buttercream that you put down. This is a tight spiral. So I start there, and then I just stay in one spot, and I turn my turntable clockwise. If you're left-handed, you're gonna be turning it counterclockwise. But again, you can see I am touching the last layer that I put on. Let me pull one more down. Now, if you have gaps, you need to make sure that you're filling in those gaps, because those will be air bubbles if you don't. So you're gonna go all the way to the edge and then over one more. Okay, so we're gonna do that. And then what you're gonna do is you're gonna take your black spatula, hold it between your thumb and your middle finger with the pointer finger on the edge. And you want to make sure the tip of your spatula is in the middle of the cake. And you're wanting to have this tipped up towards you a little bit. And you're going to just hover above the highest spot that you've iced. And you're just slowly going to apply more pressure evenly all the way to where this starts getting smooth. Now, the biggest problem that I see as far as troubleshooting for my awesome, I keep wanting to say clients, but they essentially are my estudiantes, is what you do is use too much pressure on the back end, and so when you do that, you start to dome it, and it's not flat anymore. So if you can tell right here, I have like a little gap in the middle. It's flat everywhere else, but I have this little bit in the middle. What I'm gonna do is take the buttercream on my spatula, scrape it in my bowl, then get it back on the tip of the spatula and just kind of fill in that little space, and then go back around again really lightly, and that'll cover in that spot. Okay, so if you do too much pressure on the back end of this, you're going to want to make sure you add just a little bit more buttercream and go again. You want to make sure that you're not doming this. If you have, you want to make sure this is thick too. You want this to be a thick amount of buttercream. Now the reason why is because what's gonna happen, sorry, I just remembered something. What's gonna happen is that you're going to evenly out, evening out everything, and you're going to be starting to see the top of your cake. And you don't want to do that. So you want to make sure this is a thick amount of buttercream. Then we're going to do the sides. Okay, so remember how I stopped last one? And I was like, oh yeah, I forgot something. I just remembered something. This is what I forgot to put on. Sorry, guys. I'm such an amateur. Amateur hour right here. Sorry, everybody. I suck. I'm sorry. All right, so now we're going to do the side of the cake, okay? So what you want to do is you're going to take your frosting bag and you're going to go up and under this ledge. So you want to make sure you're piping up and underneath, so then that way you're getting enough buttercream up there. And then you're going to be adding buttercream to the side of your cake, right underneath that. And you're just going to be keep going down your cake. Now, you want to make sure that you don't have any air bubbles. If you do, or any spaces between where you piped and the next round that you do, because those will be air bubbles. Now you can start at the top or you can start at the bottom. But what you want to make sure you do is make sure that this is thick, because you're going to be pulling off buttercream to make this smooth. And so you want to make sure that you're using a lot of hand pressure. That is the biggest mistake that people make, is you're using not enough hand pressure. You're going to have some killer forearms if you just keep doing this all the time, because you should see mine. Okay. They're pretty awesome. But the thing is, but the thing is that you have to make sure that you have enough on the side, so then that way when we go to pull off more buttercream, you have enough without seeing your cake. So if it's easier for you to not have any gaps, start at the bottom and go upwards. If you're wanting to go from the top and go back down, that works too. So whatever you find is easiest for you, just do that. And you're just gonna go around the cake. Now, we want to have walls at the top, and the buttercream can sometimes start drooping a bit. So if that happens to you, you can add one more ring of buttercream at the top of the cake. Go like this at the very top. You're going to pipe on that edge, okay? You're going to just do one more ring around. Next, we are going to get our opaque scraper. We have 3 rounded edges and 1 pointy edge. You want that pointy edge to be on the bottom left corner if you are right-handed, or the bottom right corner if you are left-handed. You want that pointy part to be where the cake meets the cake board. So it just depends on which is your dominant hand. Cake, cake board. If you use the rounded edge, it won't give you that clean look. No more than a 45-degree angle on the cake. That means this is 90 straight on the cake, or straight like this. On the cake is 0, so you want no less than a 45-degree angle. So you want to either do it from 90 or 45, somewhere in between. So when you're at the top of the cake, I'm going to be, remember this is really straight, I'm not going more than a ½ inch above the cake. And you're going to be starting on the thickest part of the frosting that you've added to the side of the cake. And I'm using really light pressure, and I'm just keep going around and around the cake. Really, really, really light pressure. And I just keep turning it until the buttercream starts flattening out onto the cake and smoothing down. So you're just going to keep going using light pressure. You can see I'm not pulling off a ton of buttercream. If you're pulling off a lot of buttercream, you're using too much pressure. So make sure you're not making a mess. Make sure you're not using too much pressure. And then I need to fix this gap. And I just go up and use really light pressure until it evens out. Now, if you still have more buttercream in your bag, because this was more than 5 cups. If you have these little spaces, you can fill them in. So that way you don't have to keep going further into your cake. You can just fill in these gaps. Then you're going to take your opaque scraper again. You're going to go around until those are gone. You know, use light pressure to light medium pressure depending on how it's looking. We're not pulling off buttercream. We're just pushing it onto the cake. So for all that buttercream that I added onto the cake, I've only pulled off this little. You don't want to pull off too much buttercream. Now that we have smoothed the buttercream onto the cake, we will put it into the freezer for 15 to 20 minutes to harden up your buttercream for the next step. All right, so now we pulled that out of the freezer. And now we're going to do our smoothing of this icing. It looks a little funny. I get that. That's fine. But we're going to use our metal scraper. And this is also on my Amazon shop. This is the taller one. There's two options on there. But this is the one that I typically use. It's my favorite. But what you're going to do is you're going to be going at a 90-degree angle. And the purpose of your metal scraper is to make it even straight up and down the cake, not to make it smooth and pretty. And so you're going to glide off the cake. You don't want to start and stop. You want to glide off. And you're going to want to have your fingers closer down to the bottom of your metal scraper when you do this. And as you can tell, I have a good gap on the bottom of the cake. And that just means I need to pull off more from the top. So I'm just going to be using consistent pressure and going around the cake to be pulling off that frosting. And you can tell I have more frosting on the top of my cake than I do on the bottom of the cake. And that is because I did add quite a bit more frosting on the first go around. When you have all this frosting on your scraper, you're going to then scrape this off into your bowl. However, if you have something that looks like this, I'm going to have my beautiful camera woman come over and look at this. So I have like this pretty deep valley. So it looks like a macaron where it's kind of curved to the edge of the cake. What we want to do is fill in this little gap right here. So I'm going to take this cold buttercream that I just pulled off, and I'm going to put it onto the top of the cake like this. I'm just going to kind of fill that in. Again, I'm just using the tip of the spatula. I'm not going for the entire thing. We're just going to fill in that gap at the top with cold buttercream. Okay. I've got some there, but then I'm going to keep going around. And I'll fill this in again when I have more buttercream. So you're just going to keep going around the cake, gliding off. So if you get it to where you can kind of see how it's looking like this, that's because when I have this buttercream on the middle scraper, I'm going in at a little further of an angle, like a 45 when I start, and that's going to reapply that buttercream that's on my spatula, my scraper. And so in order not to get those, you kind of have to go at a wider angle when you do this. You can take this cold buttercream and fill in spots and gaps on your cake. So you can kind of tell I pulled off quite a bit of buttercream at this point. And it's not, I still have a pretty big gap on the bottom. If I put my metal scraper up nice and even to the cake, there's a pretty big gap. So what I'm going to actually do is take some of this cold buttercream and I'm going to put it on the bottom of the cake. Right here. And then that way it's going to kind of fill in. And you're just going to see I'm going up and over to the opposite side. I'm not applying it like this or like this. You're going up and over, kind of having your elbow up high when you do this. I'm going to just kind of add some buttercream on that bottom part of the cake. We're going to be filling in that little part on the top. See, now I don't have that gap any longer, which is exactly what we're looking for. If you have a spot or two that you need to kind of fill in, so you can kind of see I have a spot right here. It needs to get filled in. And take that cold buttercream again. Put it on. All right. So now you can tell our cake is even straight up and down, what we're going to do now, we're going to take our black spatula. We're going to come in like we did previously, where we have the tip of our spatula in the middle, and we're going to have this tipped up. We're going to go around to flatten this out. Your buttercream should be cold at this point, so it should be pretty nice and easy to flatten out. You want to make sure you're not adding too much weight to the back of this spatula. You want to make sure it's nice and straight. If you have it where it's doming a little bit in the middle, sorry, my nose is itchy. You can scrape it like this and then go around. Just kind of scrape some of that excess off. Now, when you're doing other designs, you can kind of think about how you're going to be designing your cake. If you're going to be doing a drip, this edge doesn't have to be totally perfect. That's kind of nice. But for here, we're going to see our edge, so we want to make sure that it looks pretty good. So you're going to get your opaque scraper, and we're not going to be more than a ½ inch above the cake. Remember how I talked to you about that? You don't want to be doing this. That's going to round the top of your cake, and you don't want to do that. So make sure that you're only no more than a ½ inch above your cake. That means here. And you don't, that other 3½ inches needs to be on the bottom, touching the side of the cake when you're doing this. And you want to be doing it in a consistent turn. This is going to smooth out any of your imperfections. You're going to do the top first. You're using light pressure when you're doing this, making sure you're going at a consistent turn. And you're going to go down at the bottom. When you're doing the bottom, you can kind of make sure you're pushing down on your opaque scraper as well towards the board. That will clean up the board as well. So the bottom doesn't have to be absolutely perfect when you're doing this, because we're going to be doing that rind on the bottom. So you just want to make sure that you have any of the imperfections on the top fixed. You can see that mine has like a marbling in it. It's because I've done a bunch of these cake classes this month. And so I added extra buttercream into the bag to make one big bag of buttercream. And so that kind of made all these different colors, because when I did one batch, it wasn't always the exact same color. And then buttercream gets darker when it goes in and out of the fridge. So if you want to have those fun little colors, just do a bunch of different colors when you're making it. Now is we're going to make sure that we have a clean side of our bowl. And then we want a nice clean side of our bowl. And then you're going to want a nice clean paper towel. We're going to be doing the top. When we're doing the top, you want to make sure that you are pulling from, if you're right-handed, 8 or 9 o'clock, left-handed, 3 or 4 o'clock. Nowhere else. Again, this is the face of your clock. 6 o'clock is always with you. 12 o'clock is always away from you. Start with the shortest wall. And the reason why we're doing this is we want to make sure that we can see when you can pull straight. You're going to be at like a 45-degree angle when you're pulling this way. And your buttercream is cold except for the top. The wall right here is not going to be, it's going to be really soft because of what we did of breaking it down and then bring it back up. So you're just going to lightly pull down that wall, and you're going to do cake, bowl, paper towel, finger. Again, cake, bowl, paper towel, finger. When you're doing this, you want to make sure that you are doing 45-degree angle. And I'm using really super duper light pressure. I'm not going all the way across my cake. I'm just pulling down that wall. And I'm just making sure that I hover above the edge of the cake when I'm pulling this down. If you're too low, you're going to round the corner. If you're too high, it'll pucker the edge a little bit. But if you pucker the edge a little bit, you can kind of fix that by just doing this, bringing that wall back up and fixing that wall. Okay. So I'm going to go around the cake board to kind of clean this up. I'm going to wipe this down, and we're going to go on to the rind of the cake. All right, so now we're going to do the rind on the cake. We have this cold. If your buttercream has gotten a little too warm, throw your cake back in the freezer for 5 minutes and then bring it back out. You're going to get your bag of dark green. You're going to have dark green, medium green, and white. When you're doing this, you only need about 2 tablespoons of per color. This is my extra, so that's why I have more. You're going to be, wherever your dominant hand is, that's what you're going to be, which side of the cake you're going to be on. Mine's going to be on the right side of the cake. You're going to hold the bag halfway up. And then you're going, or wherever if you don't have that much in your bag, just have the entire bag in your palm. If you have more, like I do, you can just go halfway up. What you're going to do is you're going to start squeezing. And you want to make sure that this is relatively thick on the side of the cake. And you're going to do 2 to 3 layers, depending on how tall your cake is. I kind of, on my third, I will just kind of be spotty with it, because then I come in with the medium green and will fill in the spots. So then it kind of ombres up a little bit. So then you're going to go around. So I'm turning my turntable. I'm right-handed, turning it counterclockwise, being on the right side of the cake. And this is just like how when we were piping the main buttercream on the side of the cake was, you want to make sure you're touching the last layer of frosting that you apply, so then that way you don't have any air bubbles. Okay? So you don't have to go this far up the cake if you don't want to. You can go shorter, you can go taller, it's really whatever you want. So now that we've applied those, we're going to take our opaque scraper. You're going to be at like a 45-degree angle. You can do a little bit wider than a 45-degree. You're using super light pressure. This is the biggest mistake I had in class, is people use way too much pressure. And so you're pulling all of your green off. You don't want to do that. What we're doing is we're placing it back onto the cake, but then we're going to pull just a little bit off. And that's why you're using such light pressure. So this is about how much I've pulled off. You don't want to pull off a ton. I'm going to go up. You can kind of tell when you look at it, you're like, I need to pull off just a little bit more because my ombre isn't as good as I want it to be. I don't have as much green at the bottom. So I'm just going to pull off just a little bit more. And in doing so, I'm just adding a slight amount of pressure when I do this. Okay. And that's good. That's where I want it to be. So the whole point is that it's kind of got this cool rough edge to it, where it's not perfectly symmetrical all the way around. It's got kind of a wave to it and an unfinished edge, which looks really cool. So you're going to want to do that. So once you get it to this point, I would stick it in the fridge if you're going to be working with it some more. The biggest thing is you want the buttercream to be relatively cold when you put the sprinkles on the side of it, just because if you're new to this, you will push those sprinkles straight through the cake. So it's a lot easier to work with when your buttercream is a lot colder. So take it to the fridge right now, or if your buttercream is cold and you're gonna risk it, which is totally fine, just do it now. And you'll move on to the sprinkle section or the buttercream section of the rosettes on the top. Okay, so now we're going to make this watermelon for our fondant topper. And so what we're going to do, I'm going to mix the main color so that you can see what that is. And then I have a cutter that I will have linked in the description that is actually looks a little, it's going to be the exact same, just look a little bit different color-wise and everything. You will have the main watermelon piece, and you will have your outer and inner rim of the rind. And then you're going to have the seed cutter with the punch. So then that way it will push it out for you and you don't have to worry about it. So I will show you how we're going to do that next. So you get that watermelon color by adding red. If I can open it. There we go. Maybe. So you're going to do some red. And then you're going to do some baker's rose, or pink, really. You just need pink. So, and then you can adjust the color from there. It's probably going to be way too much color for this, but we're going to just roll with it. My extremely loud dog. she's being herself. Okay, so you're going to mix it. If you find that it's starting to get a little bit wet, you're going to do some cornstarch on the fondant and on the mat.
Here's a child.
Here's a child trying to be sneaky while filming. Okay, so now that you've got that mixed up, this is going to be the base color. And you're going to just cornstarch that, cornstarch your fondant, and roll that out. And then I have the biggest, these are little, I can't think of the word, stoppers, so it doesn't go down any further. So I use the largest ones possible. I will have the link in the description of these that you can buy and also the size that I'm using. So you're going to get your base cutter and you're going to cut that out first. You're going to wiggle that back and forth to kind of separate that fondant. You can push that out and then you'll see if you have this little edge pieces that you can push back into the watermelon to keep it from, look, it gives it a cleaner look if you push that into it. She's thirsty, Aunt Sarah. Okay, so now we've got the base of the watermelon. We're going to now make the green rind. So you're going to get that fondant soft. And then I'm going to switch these to the orange ones. And then I'm going to roll that out. Okay, so what I like to do is I like to roll it out flat in a line like this. And then what I do is I kind of manipulate it so that it's the correct shape. Makes it a lot easier. Then you push that out. Cutter. She's my other assistant. Holland for you. Okay. And then sometimes when you go like this on the back of it, it'll clean up that the little scraps of fondant that are left behind. That is helpful. I'm gonna take these off because we've got watermelon color all over them. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to get your water and your paintbrush. You're going to paint along the outer edge of your watermelon. You don't need too much, but just enough for it to stick. And you're going to put that green on the edge, just like that. And then on the cutters that you guys order that I am having made that you can get through Etsy, you will not have an issue with the white and green, the outer and inner parts of your watermelon rind will be the correct size. Mine that I currently have right here are not the correct size. But if you then find that you've stretched them out just a little bit when you were placing them, that's okay. I'll show you what you can do with that. You're going to cut out the white. And same, just push the back. Paint the watermelon. And then you're going to put that one on too. Okay, and then you want to make sure you push this one up right next to the green one. So then that way they are flush with each other. Okay, and then you have it, if you have little excess like I do, you can see how I have excess of the green and the white. You're just going to cut that off with just a knife. Super duper easy. All right, then what we're going to do is we're going to put a skewer in it. So when you have your skewer, you're always going to have to cut this down a little bit. So you can take some scissors. You're going to go about 2 to 3 inches up. And you're going to just kind of saw like this. And twist your skewer at the same time so you're getting all around. So it makes a little indent into it. Then you're going to snap it off. And you have that rough edge. You're going to tap it on the counter to push that all together. Now you're going to want the watermelon to be like this onto your cake. You don't want it flat. You could have it flat. That's how you want it. It's just going to have to stick up higher. You don't want it straight up and down. You just kind of want it at a little bit of an angle. So I kind of put it like, where do I want the skewer to go? How it's going to, if I stick this down on the cake, how is it going to be? And then I pull this over to the edge a little bit. And then I start twisting. I twist this back and forth while kind of lightly doing some pressure on top of the fondant. And then I'm going to twist this skewer while I'm pushing it in. You want to make sure you don't have too much on the top or too much on the bottom. You'll poke through one way or the other. So you can see the skewer is not out on either side, and that also helps doing the thickness of the watermelon. So now we're going to do the seeds. Now with the black, you can do a couple different things. So I will have a link to seeds, watermelon seeds that you can buy on Etsy, which my students love these seeds. They rave about them every single year because they taste like watermelon and they love them. Even people who aren't like not huge watermelon fans are like, these seeds are the best. So I will link those in. You can buy those, or you can just cut out more seeds when you're doing this part. And
is it like a hard candy?
Yeah, so the seeds are hard candies that you can buy on Etsy that I will have linked. But these you can just cut them out, lay them out on a plate and let them dry. And then you can then put those onto the cake. So what we're going to do is roll out this. And you will have 10 seeds or 15. Pretty sure you'll have 15 seeds on your cutters. And so you'll be able to make a lot more at one time if you need to use fondant seeds versus the candy seeds. So I push my seeds in and then I'll flip it over and I'll push down on that fondant to clean off that edge. So if you see when I go back and forth, it cleans off that edge. And then you pull this up. And then you take your punch and you put them in there and just pop them out. Just like that. Super easy and fun. You can make these thinner. You can make them a little thicker. These ones are a little thicker. And then you just will apply these onto here. I do 4 down at the bottom, evenly spaced. Okay, so I do 4 at the bottom, and then I do 1 right here. Like that. Then what you're going to do is, now that you have the watermelon, you need to let this sit at least for 48 hours. If you need it to speed up the hardening process, you can stick it in the lowest temperature your oven will go. Mine goes to 170, so you just have to put it on, make sure that it's cornstarched on the bottom, and set it on parchment, and then you can put it on a cookie tray into the oven at 170 for 15 minutes, and then take it out and let it cool at room temperature, and it should harden up pretty well. You still would like it to sit for at least 24 hours after that. Fondant can be pretty delicate if it's not dried and hardened all the way. So I would recommend making sure that it's hardened and dried. This one's been sitting out for a week, but you can do it for 48 hours, minimum 24 if you heat it up in the oven first. Now we're going to work on making the cake and assembling it. All right, so we are now at our final stage. Yay! What we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing rosettes, continuous rosettes on the top, and then we're also going to be putting our seeds on the sides. Now, I have these candy seeds. I will have the links for them. I get them from Etsy. I will have the link for it in the description below, but you can also, if you don't want to buy these because you typically have to buy them in a pretty large quantity, you can also just cut out more fondant seeds. So these are the fondant seeds. You'll have to steam them when you're done, but they're pretty similar as far as size goes. So you can do either one, whichever is easiest for you. So what you're going to do is we're going to be adding seeds to the sides. So the easiest way that I do it is I take either the side or the top of the seed, and I put the bottom of the seed on first and then kind of push it on. Now I try to do middle and then top and then bottom as far as like where the seeds are positioned. This is all artistic freedom. So if you want to just throw them on wherever, great. If you want them to be totally symmetrical, awesome. It is totally up to you how you want to have them on your cake. You can have them all facing up and down. You can have some facing side to side, or you can just, where they go, they go. It's so up to you. I'm just going to apply these seeds to the side of. Okay, now that we've got all the seeds on there, you can kind of tell I put them a little bit at random, but not at the same time. So they're pretty consistent. So what you're going to want to do is find where you want the back of the cake to be, and that's kind of where you want to start. That way you have a practice point of a starting spot where you're not really going to see the back because you're going to have the watermelon kind of covering that. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing a continuous rosette. So how you do that is you're going to start by holding your bag. You're going to start in the middle, and then you're going to go out at about 4 o'clock, and then you're going to go counterclockwise. You're going to stop the pressure right where you came out, and then wrap that. Okay, so I'm going to do that one more time so you can see it. I'm going to do it from this angle. So you're going to start it, then you're going to go out at about 4. You're going to go around, stop your pressure, but keep going so that tail tucks in. So that's how you do the rosette. Now to do a continuous rosette, you're going to start your rosette, but instead of stopping your pressure, you're going to just keep going and make like an ice cream cone. Stop your pressure when you get about 3 up, but keep going in that motion to tuck that tail in. Same as when we were doing our regular rosette. And that's how you get your cute little continuous rosette. Okay, so what we're going to do is start on the back of the cake. So you're going to want to go in about 1 inch into your cake. You're going to start your rosette, your continuous rosette, and go up. Okay, so we got 1. Then you're going to turn it all the way around to the other end. So you're going to do northeast, southwest. Okay. Make sure you have enough in your bag, so then that way when you are doing your rosette, you don't run out. Okay, so now that you do the 4, you're going to fill in the gaps. Okay, so if you have one that's closer than the other, that's okay. You can just make the rosette the size that fits in that space. Kind of gives you a good guideline. Okay, so now we have our continuous rosettes, and now we get to find where we want the front of the cake. Now I made you start on the back of the cake, so then that way you had one tester on your cake before you had to like go and do the whole thing. So now that you have them all done, you can figure out which one you want to be the front and which one you want to be the back. So I'm going to have this be my front. You get to see the back. And you're going to take your sprinkles mix. Now I have these cute little watermelons. You can get these at Michael's. I'll put them over here. So I always like to have those just on the side. And then you just make a kind of a sprinkles mix, or you can buy one that is like a watermelon sprinkles mix. And you're going to just sprinkle it on top, all willy-nilly like. Now, if you want to put more in the center, then you can put some in the center. You don't have to put any in the center. If you get some sprinkles on your side of the cake, it always helps to have tweezers. So I always have tweezers handy, just in case I put one where I don't want it to be. Okay, so you're going to use about 2 tablespoons of, or about a tablespoon to 2 tablespoons of sprinkles, just depending on how much you use. All right, now that we got all the sprinkles on it, we're going to add our watermelons. And I always want to make sure I have the front of the cake facing me, so that way I add the watermelons where I want to be able to see them. If you add them just wherever or willy-nilly, then you won't be able to see them at the end when you look at the front of the cake. It'll just be hidden behind. So I always make sure, so you see the back of the cake, now you see the front of the cake, and you can see where all of those watermelons are. That's why it's important that you make sure that you have the front of the cake on when you add those cute little watermelons. Next, we're gonna add finally we're gonna add our little watermelon on. You wanna make sure you're centering the watermelon on your cake. You don't want to center the skewer, you wanna center the watermelon. And I make sure that I have them in between 2 of these rosettes, so then that way it will kind of just fit nicely in there. When you push down that watermelon, you wanna make sure you're pushing down with the skewer part and not the top. So then that way it doesn't break, because they're very fragile. So now that we got this on, we're gonna steam. So you will have some white cornstarch on your fondant because of how it doesn't stick. It'll just be on there all the time. So what you're gonna wanna do is steam it. You wanna make sure you stay away from your sprinkles, because it'll take the color off of your sprinkles, even the seed sprinkles, if you use those. So you're gonna get the steam going. You can also use an iron, I suppose, but the steam, you wanna make sure you're staying far away from it so you're not super close. And that steam's going to kind of melt that cornstarch. Just like that. So it's all shiny and pretty. Ta-da! We have done the watermelon cake, making one of summer's most loved and beloved treats into a really sweet treat. Thank you guys for joining me. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you want to watch more of my cake decorating videos and get notified when I put out new ones every month. Please, please, please subscribe and like. I really appreciate it. I love you guys. Cinco de Mayo.
Watermelon in Spanish is sandía.
Sandía!
Oh, I heard Italian.
Sandía! I know, right? Sorry. It didn't like. Ah! Did it again.
You're good.
Okay.
¿Está listo?
What?
Yep, you good. You rolling.
So weird. Oh. Okay. 2. Okay. All right. It's exhausting. But we're here.
Woo!
We've made it. I always have to fix my apron. Size goes. So you can do either one, whichever is easiest for you. So what you're going to do is we're going to be adding seeds to the sides. So the easiest way that maybe we'll get through this.
You're definitely not Catholic.
No. No. Lay down. You're driving me nuts.
Run, children, run.
Get out of here.
Go on.
Get out of here. Get.
Close the door.